Hi, boys and girls. This is our last day of art camp. I hope you've had fun with the crafts. Remember, we want you to memorize this Bible verse that we have put here on this magnet that hopefully you have at home. So in our art camp this week, we are talking about how God is the source of everything. The source is where we get what we need. So day 1, God was the source of what we need. He provides for us. Day 2, God is the source of our strength. Day 3, God is the source of our creativity. And day 4, that's today, we're going to talk about how God is the source of our salvation. And our memory verse here, let's say it together. I'm sure you've got it at home. Hopefully you started to memorize that. 1 Corinthians 8:6. For us, there is one God, the Father, who is the ultimate source for all things and the goal of our lives. Let's remember this verse and remember that God is the source of everything. So for our last day today, we're going to talk about how God is the source of our salvation. So you've got to remember that in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve, but Adam and Eve sinned. Sin entered the world, and suddenly God couldn't be around man because God can't be around sin. They were separated, and we were in a world that was filled with sin. And along with sin comes sickness and sadness and all kinds of bad and broken things. And God knew he couldn't let his children live forever in a world like that. So he knew he would have to send someone to pay the price of sin. The price of sin is death. And so God had a creative idea, and he sent his son, Jesus. And Jesus came to pay the price for us. So God here is the source of our salvation because Jesus paid that price, death, because he died for us. That means we get to be in heaven with God. That means we get to be joined with God and not be separated by the sin that is in our lives because Jesus already paid for that sin. So we're going to talk about the day that Jesus was crucified. So you're a king, are you? The Roman soldiers laughed. You'll need a crown and a robe. They gave Jesus a crown made out of thorns and put a purple robe on him. Then they beat him and they spit on him. They didn't understand that he was the Prince of Life, the King of Heaven who had come to rescue him. The soldiers made him a sign, our King, and nailed it to the cross. They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they were going to kill him the way criminals were killed. So there's Jesus, and he is carrying the cross there on his back as he's walking up. And there's Jesus hanging on the cross, and above him they put that sign that says, our King. They nailed Jesus to the cross. Father, forgive them, Jesus gasped. They don't understand what they're doing. You say you've come to rescue us, people shouted, but you can't even rescue yourself. But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A whole army of angels could have flown to his side if he'd called. If you were really the Son of God, you could just climb down off that cross, they said. And of course, they were right. Jesus could have climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop. Like when he healed the little girl and when he calmed the storm. Remember, we talked about that from day 2 when Jesus showed how his great strength. Or when he fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. Papa, Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. Papa, where are you? Don't leave me. Who is Jesus calling out to? He's calling out to God right now. And for the first time and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just an endless, horrible silence. God didn't answer. He turned away from his boy. Tears rolled down the face of Jesus. The face of the one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Why did God have to turn away? Because Jesus was taking on the sin that God cannot be around. He was taking on our sin and paying the price for it. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun couldn't shine, the earth trembled and quaked, the great mountains shook, rocks split in two until seemed the whole world would break, that creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own son instead of his people. It was the only way God could destroy sin and not destroy his children, whose hearts were filled with sin. And then Jesus shouted in a loud voice, "It is finished!" And it was. He had done it. Jesus had rescued the whole world. "Father," Jesus cried, "I give you my life." And with a great sigh, he let himself die. Now we know that that is not the end of the story. Jesus died to pay that price of sin, but on the third day, he rose again. And because he rose again, that meant he defeated sin and death once and for all. So that meant he was able to pay the price for everyone's sin, for the people whose sin came before him, for the people whose sin came after him, for your sin, for my sin, forever, everyone's sin. And so today, let's remember that God is the source of our salvation. Because Jesus died for us, we get a chance to be with God without that barrier between us. We get to be with God forever. Your crafts today, older kids, you're going to get to do a cross shape. It's called string art. You're going to wrap your yarn all around the nails and make some art out of that. And for our younger kids, you get to do a bead necklace. And on your bead necklace, you'll get a chance to draw a cross on it or put a sticker cross on it that'll help you remember Jesus. I hope you guys have had fun with Art Camp. I know that I've had fun putting it together. I pray for you, and I hope that you will remember this verse longer than just this week. Let's write that verse on our hearts and remember that God is the source for everything.